Boker Tov and good morning. I'm Rabbi Steve Moskowitz of Congregation Lador Vador here on Long Island, and this is Monday Musings, a 15-minute spiritual kickstart to the week in which I am joined by friends and sometimes family members to share a little bit of their insights into life. This morning, I'm joined by my friend Michael Gan. Michael is a labor and employment lawyer at Gan Gisler in Washington, Gisler in Washington, D.C. And he's helped rabbis out for over 20 years in many ways. We have become friends in large part because we share a passion for cycling. And Michael, how many rabbis can you discuss the virtues of 25 millimeter tires over 23 millimeter tires? So I'm grateful for what's that?
So as I like to say, I happen to know the fastest rabbi triathlete perhaps in the world. And that's you.
I don't know if that is true. I'm always competing with myself more than anyone else. So also Michael is the son of a Reform rabbi. And so he has a unique window and view into the rabbi world. And so I thought I would have Michael on the show, as I like to call it, although it's a bit presumptuous. So I don't know what our viewership is up to quite yet, but I like to have Michael on the show to share a little bit of his insights into growing up in a rabbi's home. So Michael, tell us, where did you grow up? Synagogue?
Yeah, I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up really in Los Angeles after my dad served a couple of years in the Army after rabbinical school, which was what everyone did back in the 1960s, and ended up in Los Angeles in 1969 as a 4-year-old. Grew up in LA. My dad was Rabbi at Temple Isaiah in Los Angeles, retired in 2007. And I was in LA until I left for college in 1983.
So his entire career was at that one synagogue.
Yeah. He was at Temple Isaiah for 38 years. I guess first as an assistant and associate to Rabbi Albert M. Lewis, and then became senior rabbi and served for almost 4 decades. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of stability. And so
it is. I think it's that kind of trajectory is unlikely to happen. I think going forward, I've seen sort of trends and changes, and the idea of a very, very long-serving rabbi in the same place is probably a thing of the past.
Yeah, not entirely. That looks like it's my brother's trajectory. So we're very happy for him. And so tell us, what was it like growing up? I mean, did you like being your dad's student in Hebrew school?
Yeah, I actually did. I think if you asked him that question, he might have a different answer.
I'll have to have him on the show.
You have to imagine that, he taught confirmation class when I was in 10th grade. So by this time I had, all of my best friends were friends from Temple. We all went to different public and some private high schools, but, the Temple was the glue that kept us together. And so you can imagine, he's one of the teachers, and I feel very comfortable, obviously, with him and being at the Temple. It's like my playground. And so I think from his perspective, it's probably difficult to have me as a student. I didn't really draw a very clear line between being, my dad's son and being a student in his class. So that led to some, there was plenty of hijinks, and I'm sure it was uncomfortable for me to do something that made him laugh, and he would laugh out loud at me, playing practical jokes. It's just so wrong. That's what it was.
I think that's great. It's so.
Yeah. It was a very normal. I mean, many of these kids, and many of the guys that slept over at my house, these were my best friends, and they knew him as Bob, not as Rabbi Gan. They were our friends.
So you said something that was really interesting, that the synagogue was the glue that was for that bound your friends to each other and bound you to them.
It really was. I mean, we really all went. I mean, I went to some of the folks in my class were from my same school, but just the way the boundaries were for the local schools. There were kids from lots of different schools, and so the time we got to spend with each other was during Hebrew school, Saturday mornings and Tuesday afternoons, and that's when I would see my friends, and I looked forward to it, and mostly for that reason.
Did this was that part of the synagogue's function, or was that just sort of an LA, a piece of LA? Do you think? I mean, because you have also this unique view of a lot of synagogues now.
I do. Yeah, but I don't know the schedules. I don't know what, but I think it's just it was just the uniqueness of the sort of the catchment area. I mean, there are lots of Reform synagogues in LA, and some of them are pretty close to one another. And it's not like you're living in a certain boundary, but the reality is that there were kids from West LA, there were kids from Beverly Hills, there were kids from Century City, there were kids from just different elementary and even high schools. And so we got together when we were at Temple, and we looked forward to seeing each other. I think I was less interested in being at Temple probably, and more interested in seeing my friends.
Do you think that's how everyone felt?
Yes, I do. I mean, yeah, probably. I mean, as you got older, maybe you appreciated it more, but it was, for me, it was a social opportunity, social event. Like even in ninth grade, hovrat noir, which is this wonderful program in LA that used to exist, where you brought kids from not just Reform synagogues, but conservative and Orthodox, and they were all together at Hilltop in Malibu for 6 weekends a year, and we'd all come together. We're all from different areas of the city, different socioeconomic situations. And yeah, there was a curriculum there. I don't remember a ton about the curriculum. I'm sure it was really good, but it was really an opportunity for me to be with other Jewish kids from the city and share experiences.
Yeah, I think that's phenomenal. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure that translates to, the New York, Long Island experience here. And I'm not sure. I don't even know what present day LA would be like.
Yeah, no, I don't, and I'm not sure. I know either. But it was a very unique program. I was really sad to see it disappear, because it really we had Orthodox counselors, I remember, and that was like my first introduction to Orthodox Judaism. But it was great.
So there had to be times where your dad had to be rabbi and not dad, if you will. Was there ever sort of like like your bar mitzvah, a wedding? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean,
you have a sister too.
I have a sister, my sister Hillary. Yeah. I mean, he tried not to make those distinctions very obvious. I mean, when we were out in public and people would see my dad, we had an understanding. If he didn't introduce me, it meant that maybe he didn't know who these people were. They may have seen him at a wedding or a funeral, and he didn't want to be embarrassed or embarrass me. So the understanding was I would introduce myself if I wasn't introduced right away.
So
that's when I knew he was a rabbi. I mean, I had to do that.
Right. And you had to serve in that role as assistant, so to speak.
Yeah, right. So, but there were lots of times where, I was with him when he was doing his rabbi thing. I remember he was offered tickets to the World Series by a congregant in 1977. I think it was the Yankees playing the Dodgers at Dodger Stadium. And, he was really upset because there was a wedding that he had scheduled at, like noon at the Beverly Hilton Hotel, and the game was at 1:00, and he's like, we can't go. And then he thought for a minute and says, we can go. You just come with me. You hold my gym bag. I'll put my shorts and shirt in the gym bag, and I will conduct the fastest wedding that I've ever conducted. And I'll give the valet, a $10 bill, and he'll keep the car right there at the entrance to the hotel. And we got there for the first pitch of that World Series game. So, there were lots of moments like that.
There were moments where you had to sort of delay something that you were doing as a family because of a synagogue event. Yeah, I mean, the thing about the rabbi's life is it is not 8 in the morning to 5 o'clock at night. Obviously, it's much more irregular hours that intrude on family time.
Yeah, and then, I'm sure that many congregants don't understand what's happening behind the scenes. You know what I mean, and what else you have to do that keeps you away from the temple building. But obviously, there's a lot of things that are going on that aren't happening in the temple that are related to the job of being a rabbi.
Yeah, the thing about the rabbi's job is the behind the scenes. We're most on when people are off, is how I like to put it, right? So that's sort of when we have to do more of our things, because they're on weekends or when the kids would be off of school, and so that's part of what you're reflecting on. So
Yeah.
was there ever times uh, that you really felt the rabbi the rabbi part of your dad, more?
I guess, being at high holiday services, at the Century Plaza Hotel with all these people and a big bima and the white robes, and because that was not him. So there was a demarcation there.
What do you mean that was not him?
I mean, it just that was for high holy days. I mean, that was not how I normally saw him. So that kind of reminded me, oh yeah, he really is a rabbi. Look at that. There was the pomp and circumstance.
And the formality of the high
Formality of,
holidays.
as a little kid though, I remember, crawling up underneath that robe when he was greeting everybody after services and, punching my arms out. And the robe is, going all over the place and I'm underneath it. I remember those things.
Yes, and look, and he still was able to become senior rabbi.
You still, yeah, but yeah, that's pretty amazing.
I'm just kidding with you, but those are great memories. Yeah, the formality, that must be a bit, to all of a sudden see your parent as in a much more formal setting than you usually see
Exactly.
them.
He had a pulpit exchange with Chip Murray, who was a pastor in LA of First AME Church, and they did a pulpit exchange, and it happened kind of late in my growing up years. But I mean, I remember going to the church on Martin Luther King Day and watching my dad do his thing and preach a sermon. And that was, again, that was another time where it really made me realize that this is what he did. And he was really
Did
good.
you did you offer him critiques of the sermons?
No, no, he would always ask, he would ask. And then later in life, he would send me his sermons when I was in college or law school, or even to, recently send me sermons and have me read them. And they were great. And it's funny because I give speeches a lot, and especially to some of my union clients, give big, addresses in front of, several thousand people, mostly, not Jewish. And people have come up to me and say, you talk like a preacher. you know? So I think I probably learned something from him in terms of the way I do my thing. But it's kind of funny to hear that.
Yeah, our kids always give us they give us reviews in terms of our sermons, and pointed critiques sometimes, which we appreciate. They don't usually do a comparison contrast, which is, I think, helpful.
Yeah.
But there was a few years when our kids were younger where they had this sort of inner competition about who would be mentioned more in a sermon. So I realized that, and I would just have to like throw in a mention, like even though I was using a story from Shira's life to illustrate something, I'd have to throw in a couple of mentions of Ari or something to make sure it was balanced and it was 2 for 2 or something like that. So
just imagine making hatch marks on your notepad, making sure you've got it covered. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. So and the sun is just coming out now. Look at that. So it's glaring on me. So what about difficult moments? You were saying before when we were talking earlier that the high holidays could get a little crazy. The preparation for it.
Yeah, in August, late August, my dad would be in his high holy day zone, and you really couldn't get much help from him during those periods of time. And
it's impressive because I don't usually gear up till September. So
yeah, no, he was, you're right. Maybe he was early, but you just learn to live with it. That was the time when just don't expect a whole lot. And he was busy writing sermons, and I understand that. I mean, one other kind of funny moment that I remember is, there's this point in every rabbi's career where they have to decide, am I going to stay at this place as an assistant or associate, or am I going to go be a senior rabbi somewhere else? And he was obviously thinking about that early in his career in LA. And I came home one day from elementary school, and there on the table was a lot of promotional material from Madison, Wisconsin. And the light bulb went off. I was probably in 4th or 5th grade, and I realized that he was contemplating a move to Madison. So when he got home, I was very confident in myself. I said, if you want to move to Madison, that's fine, but I'm staying in Los Angeles. And I imagine a lot of rabbis have that kind of reaction or those kinds of conversation with their kids.
Yeah, I mean, there are those moments, for everyone where they make that decision to stay. I mean, I have to say the benefits for both Susie and me and my brother, which is just kind of remarkable. All three of us have been at our synagogues for well over 20 years, and the relationships that you build with such a long time when you're at the synagogue, you really get to see people from in every stage of their life, and you've known them literally since they're babies. Yeah. I've been joking with this one young girl in our congregation, who's now a young woman, that she will be my first rabbinic hat trick when she gets married, because she was the first baby naming that I did at the synagogue. Yeah. When I first started. So I'm not sure if that's how she might see her wedding. So in terms of my accomplishments, so to speak, or my longevity, but it is quite unique.
Now, I was just going to say, I remember him doing several generations of bar mitzvahs, and that was a big milestone for him. He like you, I mean, he thought that was a great thing to be able to do.
It's an amazing feeling, and it's to really remember, the infant who's now standing, who's now grown and standing next to you on the bima, and also in most of those circumstances to have been friends with the parents then, for that many years, and have seen them through just as many of life's journeys and milestones as you have. And and I'm sure this was for your dad as well. There's a whole cadre of people at the synagogue who are the same age, who are sort of like, our kids are now in college, our kids are now getting married. Sure. And so there's part of that journey. So you want to give us any closing thoughts before we wrap up? Just meant as a kickstart. So we're winding down.
Well, I guess, I don't know. I mean, since we just had New Year's, I guess the only closing thoughts are less about specific to rabbis and more about just us as people these days. That I think, hopefully we're going to turn the corner in all of the mishigas that we've been experiencing. And, it's hard to think that 2021 couldn't be a lot better than 2020. And so I guess I often make the talk about the glass being half empty or half full, and I'm really starting to think that it's half full again. So which is a good way to think.
It is, and now you are again sounding like a preacher.
Yeah, exactly. And
so that's great.
And now we can ride our bikes and not maybe in the future and ride with other people again and do the kinds of things that we like to do.
That would be great. It would be wonderful. I do think 2021 is going to offer us much hope and healing. I think it is, as I've liked to say, and as I'll offer this conclusion, is like we can see the bend in the road. Like it's unclear how far away it is right now, if it's 3 months or 6 months, but we can see it. Like, and 6 months ago we weren't even sure where it was, if it existed. So we can see it there, and we will turn a corner sometime this year. That is my profound belief. And so we will be riding together soon and again.
Absolutely. Look forward to that.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, Michael, for being on the show.
Right,
and I appreciate your insider's view to the rabbi's life, and I think it offers some encouragement to all of us rabbis that our kids are going to be okay.
Your kids can be normal. Yeah, that's true. They might start out a little bit rocky like I did, but I think in the end, they'll come around.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Take care.